Welcome back, guys. We are here in the midst of Griffin versus KingZoneDragonX, and game number one was kind of thrown over to KingZone, and they caught it with a gigantic glove and said, thank you very much. We will pilot this to the victory in just about 10 minutes, and they look confident all the way through from when they were behind to when they were ahead. That means great things for KingZone up against one of our best teams in Griffin here in Korea.
Absolutely, Valdez. Definitely. When the top side was so woefully far behind, I just plugged and played a game where KingZone were never able to play a 5v5 team fight scenario, and that the pressure that you could have through Lissandra's roams, Jace's priority in the 1v1, and how far Elise was ahead in the jungle matchup would just not make it about Oran Horns and narrow pathways around Baron. Instead, the timing of the misexecution post 20 minutes while Baron was on the Rift allowed KingZone to turn into, remember, a 50-50 Baron to get their first Baron. By the second one, they'd done the outscale, they'd won, and now we're in a very close-knit series between KingZone and Griffin, where KingZone have shown that their development has been true over the course of spring season. Griffin need to find a different avenue, and you would imagine put Sword onto some comfort because the laning phase was very well played, but his mistake into the backline was what really accelerated KingZone's re-entrance into game number one.
Yeah, it definitely does feel that way, and we'll have to wait and see. I mean, he's not going to get Jace this game, that's for sure, as Griffin are on the red side, so maybe something like a Scion, you know, get him onto that comfort you were talking about might be a little bit better for game number two, just to secure your spot for a game three in this sense. But already Galio and Elise for KingZone and Kalista and Rise are going to be taken off the table.
See what happens here when it comes to a Jace ban, as final ban for Griffin. Silas notably was banned, if you remember, at the final ban on red side in game number one. So we'll see if that happens in this particular series. I'd love to see some Silas, because we've, of course, talked it up, but not been able to see it on the Rift. Very interesting banning. You notice a Talia ban. Now, Tarzan has largely been the Talia player on the side of Griffin and will play those AP junglers to set tempo usually in the mid-game. He's been the one that's been getting them through what can sometimes be a very restful early game phase for Griffin. So that's the Talia gone. Silas will be this final ban, this time from Griffin. Does KingZone want to first pick Jace? The answer is no, probably because they might be skeptical as to whether Griffin would return to it a second game in a row.
It's very interesting. I mean, in game number one, Griffin were essentially given, you know, it's a little bit easier on the blue side to get the Jace, but they were given Jace and Lissandra in game number one. So KingZone essentially saying you could do that again if you really want to, but you guys did lose essentially in that one. So Griffin going to take a different route and go for the Jarvan here as their first pick.
What they want to combine this with, probably Jarvan jungle, but if it's a certain range top laner, so it could potentially play it in top lane. First round champions here might be a bit of safety onto Viper. This would be a very high priority on Ezreal, so it's going to be an option they're considering. Will be a return to the Jace anyway. Remember, it was a great laning phase for Sword and some nice execution in the early skirmishes, but of course your eyes will be drawn to the misexecution in the team fight that opened up the Baron and the comeback for the side of Griffin.
Now, Oran is going to be picked here quite early, was picked on the red side fourth pick in the last game. And you would think, you know, Lissandra's still available, but other strong picks, the LeBlanc even hovered, saying, hey, by the way, Pawn can play this pick, as they do actually lock in the Lucian.
Real chance this will be bot lane Jace from Viper, especially if further AD carry bans come in the second round if they don't take an AD carry first round here. Do notice the Lucian already locked in for KingZone. Lissandra's open, has had 100% presence rate for a long time in Korea in recent memory. It's going to be selected anyway. Now, KingZone could take the Lucian in mid lane. There's a possibility of that, but expect it to be the pick for Deft. Bans here are going to be a little bit more ships in the night than we're used to, because there's still some cunning ruses available for both Griffin and KingZone.
Corki in the mid lane up against Lissandra is a good start. And the Tom Kent's taken away, so you can't go straight for some kind of hyper carry plus Tom Kent. by the side of KingZone.
So what they combine that with, when it comes to lane matchups into Lissandra, the Corki has been the only successful one that we can remember of recently, and that has always been there as a farming lane against this. Now, outranging Lissandra is the most reliable way to play through her. LeBlanc ban is a different look than we're used to. It is a skill matchup usually that I've always believed is closer to 50-50.
Maybe that hover got to them, you know? You always talk about the hover bind games, but...
Horn loves that kleptomancy LeBlanc. He
Yeah.
plays it quite a bit. And we now get the confirmation that we should actually know the lanes. So 2 bans later, it is Lock in Israel, ostensibly against the Lucian. Shen after the Shen buff's going to come in on the blue side. Just a bit of on-hit damage, so not the most relevant. And it's a old Horn favorite. It's Morgana in the mid lane against Lissandra.
Definitely another one of those picks that can, you know, throw up a black shield, survive up against some of the pick that Lissandra offers, but also can push back by just having that AP in the mid lane and being able to clear the wave relatively easily. I think that Lissandra still wins that push war, but can do a decent job there. Karma going to be picked up once again for the side of Lehends.
KingZone this game, they return to the Orin, found them so much advantages in the mid to late game. Do notice they don't have the super high damage 2-threat comp they did in game number 1. This time, it's going to be the Morgana mid lane and the Lucians. This is very much more about timings, you would feel, than perhaps game number 1. I've been impressed with Morgana mid so far, but I feel like some of that was draft related. The Black Shield is definitely going to be trained upon one of Horn and Deft, you would imagine, but you hit your timings, Black Cleavers, and Play the Ruin Kings, you can definitely hit the ground running in the mid-game. However, the enemy team is pretty similar when it comes to top side. It's Lissandra Jace again. It's another pretty early ganking jungler in the Jarvan. So to me, this game is very much about who has the superior early game rather than some of the outscale options available for KingZone in game number 1. You still look at Orin and quiver in fear because of the fact that Jace doesn't really have a role in 5v5s like Orin's, just bread and butter. But my first read is early game even more important in game number 2.
Definitely going to be a fun one. We'll see if Pawn can go from the Corki against Lissandra and just farming up and doing kind of an auto attack AD carry impression into just a straight up caster and having the twitch fingers to get the black shield down onto whoever's going to be engaged upon Pawn. Picking up the MVP from game number 1. We'll have to have another stellar performance here in game 2 to carry his team to the victory. And speaking of which, it looks like we're ready to hop onto the Rift right now. So KingZone up against Griffin, game 2. Let's do it.
생성까지 30초 남았습니다.
Here we are back on the Rift, as some of you, if you're just joining now, may be surprised to see KingZone up 1-0 up against Griffin, but Griffin may be taking their game for advantage. Their early game was fantastic, but then one team fight later, all of a sudden they're like, oh wait, they got Baron? What happened? And KingZone, props to them, really did a fantastic job to come back in that one, so now they're only one game away from taking out the team that is already in the finals here for LCK Spring 2019. We're going to take a look at some of the runes once again on our massive page of runes.
And here's an interesting one. Ingenious Hunter actually is in the secondary domination in Genius Hunter for Zhonya's Hourglass CDR, perhaps other items as well, like Protobelt up there. Is the Glacial Augment as the main rune on the Morgana. Makes a lot of sense, even more utility. Otherwise, it's finding an ult only, but a lot of different slows. So GOP, Zhonya's, Twin Shadows, these could all be items that the Morgana will be looking to abuse with her Keystone, and it's another mid-game choice because Glacial Augment is usually the price of damage for utility in the mid-game.
Exactly. I'm glad you got to the other items as well, because you just stack up all the active items on this Glacial Augment Morgana. It gets pretty intense, so definitely by far the best Hunter rune to go for.
And also too tricky for me, the chances of fat fingering an active is super high.
Zone
when you have lots of them. Yeah.
in the wrong position.
You're like, I'm gonna catch them with my oh,
yeah.
That's not the one.
Definitely does happen. I was playing it a bit with GLP instead of twin shadowing a couple of times.
And those are very different things.
Yeah.
It's almost like you spilled your water somewhere.
Kind of does feel that way, actually. Oh, I dropped my GLP all over the place. Like, sounds like a Twitch chat copy pasta.
Well, we're all about Twitch chat copy pastas when we can. It is a champion that if you think about the 1v1 matchup, rather than just Black Shield onto Lucian and watching him relentlessly pursue aggressively, is going to be pretty able to take teleport into a Lissandra matchup, and, unless the Black Shield is baited, be able to be just fine, right? The ability to walk away against the Lissandra in particular is very rare.
Yeah, it's definitely a feels good lane. Shouldn't get behind or anything like that in the mid lane, and it's exactly what you want out of Fawn. This time around, Deft not going up against Vayne. He's going to have that advantageous Lucian versus Ezreal kind of battle down at the bottom side. So more carry potential for him to potentially get some more MVP points. We talked about that race before, Chovy versus Deft, the two of them going head-to-head in this game.
It's a big shout-out to KingZone. I'm sure if you go back and listen to game number 1, I was counting them out, as you know. And the reason for that was just how strong at the time the early power spike comp was on the side of Griffin, and how many avenues they had to a victory, and what seemed like KingZone shouldn't have it. And that sounds like very strong logic. Sorry, very strong language, especially given that Griffin lost that game. But the main reason for that was the ways in which KingZone were able to win that game were to largely make it about 5v5s. But all the champions on the side of Griffin were able to roam around, and specifically with Jace's pressure, just punish and rotate around the Ornn in the 1 and get big leads. It should never have been about 5v5 fight into Baron, but the gold lead, like we noticed, was only around the 3,000 gold point. And if that pick happened at 17 minutes and there's no Baron, there can be no huge reintroduction for the top side of the map from KingZone. The way it did come together really played into the hands of KingZone, and big credit to them. For them to stick around, for them to have the strong mental to shrug off what was an abjectly poor top side of the map first 15 minutes is, to me, not what we saw in Kesper Cup, not what we saw in the early part of the season. There's trust in 5 members on the side of KingZone, not just can Deft carry us over the line.
Yeah, I mean, you get into a lot of discussions towards the end of every split, and you think to yourself, you know, which team was the one that grew the most over the course, and which team was the one that perhaps fell the most? Well, definitely does seem like the easy victor for most growth in the team over a split is KingZone, especially based on our expectations for them coming into this.
And if you think it's kind of a surreal thing to say, because Sandbox is likely to end higher than them, and yet the promoted team that we knew almost nothing about was already good at the start and has largely maintained their spot, whereas KingZone, names like Deft and TusiN, grew as a 5, and Deft and TusiN have actually been able to take a step back. They're still, of course, so important for this team. One of the most interesting stats separating the two teams is damage percentage for AD carries. Damage percentage for Viper is 26.7%. That's actually pretty low for an AD carry, especially in the context of Deft, who's #1 in the LCK and #2 of any player in the world, behind Power of Evil, who is 35.4%. Deft is at 35.1%, 0.5% ahead of Ruler, the ultimate 1v9 player.
That's pretty insane. I mean, really nice stat to bring up as well. It really does highlight just how much Deft has carried in a way and built the team around him and got that confidence going. Speaking of which, the top lane we were looking for, the knock-up into the double knock-up, the knock-back there from Jace, not nearly enough. They're going to see Tarzan coming in with that Tremor Sense, and that's just a clean first blood in the top lane.
You always assume you're fine if there's no Ignite taken by the Unsealed Spellbook. Instead, no backs happen, just all in under turret. The item lead is, of course, there for Rascal, because he gets to build items while they stay in lane, take the turret expertly, and that's why Ornn plus a ganking jungle like first pick Rek'Sai can actually make the Jace be accountable in a lane. The buy was actually Bilgewater, but that wasn't available as this fight happened. Reliable CC targeted with the Unburrow into the Orange Horn there, beautifully done. And you can just hear there's no huge proclamations because that was just clean.
We got him. Nice. That's it. They knew what they were going for. Very nicely set up. No summoners used on either side. Actually, nobody blowing their flash into play, which is generally pretty uncommon. Or just not expecting that one. Nice job done. So, really good stuff. We were talking about Deft being the carry and sometimes the top side of the map here for KingZone being shaky, but they are able to convert into that one. And it's now Cuzz hitting level 6 is going to clear out a bunch of vision around that Infernal Drake, which is going to be the first one of the game.
With Ornn being able, Orange Horn, we mentioned already, the Jason Ezreal, but the Karma also. They returned to Karma this game, which to me is pretty curious a choice from the side of Griffin. Yes, it's again very strong in lane, and you have a roaming support versus a laning support, Shen versus Karma, but the Karma is another person that just gets owned by the Orange Horn every team fight, right? As a range support with not a lot of base stats behind her. And they've not been able to inject any meaningful CS lead in the laning phase. The moment Lucian was locked in first round, he knew that it's going to be very hard to put him far behind. So it feels like KingZone are just winning with Shen support, which just sounds like winning the map and also winning the lane.
Certainly does feel good. We got TP advantage in the top side. Rascal could also, we saw the damage he was doing solo one-on-one, could even try to get on in there with Ignite, but he's got TP advantage for now. They have Shen, who's hit level 6 and could join in on fights. A lot of options here for KingZone in the early game.
And I was poking your shoulder about us because I noticed something. What are we building here, Deft? Are we building Essence Reaver onto this Lucian? When you see the build items already of the Caulfield's Warhammer and also the pickaxe, that is your thought. I believe it's been built once before. I can't remember if that was LCK or not. I watch a lot of League of Legends around the world, so this might actually be a crit Lucian in a way that we haven't seen in a while. Black Cleaver will be an item choice for Cuzz, so maybe don't want to have the redundancy there as KingZone turn onto the Infernal Drake, the first spawn of the game, and with their priority against a Karma lane, they take it as, all right, what's happening here?
Well, Rascal was running down, and he kind of got caught out by Tarzan with the red buff. Flashes into that one. No flash on Rascal, as he used it earlier, is going to pay the price. And, well, wasn't expecting to be caught off in the transition down, and they're just, I mean, KingZone's still able to get the Infernal, which is quite nice, so they do get that big bonus, but I suppose not getting caught would have been better.
It's an unforced error. You understand why he's walking down because he's got the Orange Horn. He's thinking maybe there'll be a team fight over the Infernal Drake, but he didn't have his wits around him and was turned off. Let's watch the vision situation here. The reason why Rascal will feel hard done by is, why is Tarzan on the top side when Infernal Drake's going down? It's one of those things where Tarzan just wasn't looking to contest this Infernal, so Rascal goes down, does draw the flash out of Tarzan, not out of sword. We'll see if they can return to this because Rascal should eventually be able to swap the summoners and have another mobility summoner to try to escape further.
Cuzz here going for the essentially 10-minute Rift Herald, and well, they already got the Infernal, so that would be two massive objectives to take this early on in the game and just get them ahead. So it's going to go down really, really quickly.
And this is so cool because if you look at the champions again, you say, wait, Lissandra, Jarvan, Jace have lost Infernal and the Rift Herald, when if we usually see a drop like this, we say, oh, how unlucky the enemy team is that with priority drops, you're able to not pick up, you know, these are things that should be pretty free for such a strong top side of the map. But I think KingZone are just being really hot-handed in the early game here. They feel like the hot knife through butter in this early game, and they're just taking every opportunity before Griffin can really put everything together. Extra point and Black Shield showing that they want some extra guaranteed safety, maybe the ability to have enough magic damage to repel 2 spells rather than just have it easily popped into the further stuns. Mid lane, Chovy gonna back away.
See that he went for the Lehends, which was also highlighted to not go for any TLP Twin Shadows, none of the kind of synergy items that you do get with that Glacial Augment. I suppose you will be picking that up a little bit later. As okay, Cullen just coming on in. Tarzan is actually right in position on a control ward to try to get into that fight, but they do actually just back away.
We definitely don't always see complete slow item stacking when you go for the Twin Shadows. We've seen even just one slow item, like for example, Twin Shadows or GLP, rather than both on Vel'Koz, which was the other pretty common mid-lane Glacial Augment champion we've had in the past. I guess Scion is the boring version that doesn't build any of those items, but we did see Glacial Augment Scion and I guess Tahm Kench from time to time. So that'll be a later thing. Ornn already has plenty of utility in his kit, and it's 5 points into Tormented Soil. I actually think it's called a different thing now. It's called Tormented something else. They changed the name on the W, but you at home get the idea. I'll look it up, but 5 points into W for a Morgana means push, push, push.
Push, push, and extra AP for your Black Shield that you're maxing second means that that thing's not getting popped, as you were highlighting before. Rift Herald gonna come in. Looks like all the gold will go the way of the Ornn, and Rascal is, he's a rich Ornn up in the top side, going piece for piece here for the Jason. Actually 600 gold ahead of the Jason, the top side.
And the scary thing is, 5v5 wise, we know this champion outscales, and he always has his stock picks, as Cuzz gets super aggressive here of the late game extra items.
Spike goes the way of Tarzan, as okay, ult is not going to actually get down, but Rascal trying to force this one pawn. Coming on in with the TP, but they really were pushing this too hard. Here comes Chovy trying to get over the wall. Where is the angle of escape for KingZone? It doesn't look like it exists. Ignite goes down on a Tarzan, but it's not gonna kill him. Doesn't look like here. Pawn under the turret, one more auto will do it. He's gonna go down, and Rascal as well. Everybody gets baited in by Cuzz, and 3 people go down.
Cuzz baited by the priority topside, thought he could steal everything as Viper's falling low in the 1v2 bot lane after the Shenron came through. Griffin actually finding a huge amount of kills topside that didn't seem on the menu with how well the Ornn was doing topside, but the damage actually interrupting the burrow over the wall, and like you say, that was definitely a domino situation. It was set up for KingZone, but suddenly 1 led to 2, led to 3. KingZone do find a bot lane turret, and Cuzz, with his tail between his legs a little bit, will get the cloud trick.
Yeah, and with everybody just roaming up to the top side, and Griffin trying to take advantage of the situation, at least KingZone were able to respond with their own bottom turret here, so 1 for 1 in the turret, but take another look at how Cuzz just really was man-moding a little bit too hard this time.
Trying to sense a cost, saw Tarzan on the camp. He's like, I've got Ornn here, I'll be fine. Ornn ult is up, but the damage interrupts the burrow through the tunnel, and then Rascal misses the stun on Tarzan, who intelligently parts to the middle of the brush there, and as we know, they follow on for further kills. Sword was actually really smart in the cleanup here. He never puts any damage into Rascal after this point. Watch how this might happen. He knows Rascal is dead, and he needs every auto attack to kill Pawn. Under turret, final auto will do it. If he had turned and then 1 single auto to Rascal, Pawn would have gotten out.
Very true. Saw that earlier on where they let a support live, you know, so on the cannon, and it kind of tilted me a little bit, but Sword knows what's good. He's able to get that kill down, and that makes this game very even in terms of gold. Of course, KingZone do have the double 3 and the Ornn competition, so we'll have to see where the game does go from here, but definitely a nice little turnaround moment for Griffin.
This game is definitely in a really fine spot. KingZone with the Ornn, even though they gave over those 3 kills to Griffin, they found quite a lot. Here we go.
Nice knockback to deny that one, but everybody's getting up in the top side, 3-on-1. You can see Tarzan was thinking about getting up there, but decided no, my friend is already dead. And so just a nice gank comes in from KingZone.
Yes, straight up kill. And KingZone do have a team comp that, with the objective lead they already have, Griffin needs to stick the control wards you see bot side around the pressing objective again and again. Otherwise, if you come in late against Ornn, you just die, Valdez, if the deep vision is already down. Through the Ornn, they're going to pick up another turret, as we can see. So in spite of the Shen ultimate top side, they were able to pick up that bot lane turret as we saw. They take the top lane turret as well. I feel like KingZone is still in a really good spot as we start to emerge into the mid game.
And they certainly are, as the two mid laners gonna hop to the bot side. You can see even that pawn with his item selection does do quite a nice amount of damage with that W up against the Lissandra, even if he only gets a couple of ticks on it. And I guess it's time to bully Sword again, say KingZone. And well, there's the big one. He's moving over towards the right side. The Hunters waiting in the brush, but the ward does come down. And nobody will fight the dust here.
And we were talking about how it wasn't as clear if 10 people run at each other, who wins in game 2 compared to game number 1, where it was so clear that the Ornn would be the separator. However, let's not talk about just the 5v5 stake, because that's not the whole game, right? There's a lot of play around skirmishes and side lanes. Right now, Sword can't push forward and press in his lane, so Jace can't apply pressure. Meanwhile, Ornn is going fine in the lane and will be better in a team fight, so it feels like relatively, Jace is stunted and Ornn has kind of found his footing. That's a relevant thing. Ornn also going to dole out the items as the game goes on, and that injects 4,000 gold to his allies and 2,000 gold to his own inventory, so that's also a relevant point. So even if there isn't the same break points in other champions, the relative difference between Ornn and Jace might actually be teams continuing to see that this is going to be something a lot of teams are going to try to play forward, both in pro games and you would for sure say scrims, because we're seeing first round Ornns into Jace, making the Jace look a lot more narrow win condition. It feels like we're in 2015 again, and will Jace split push or do they lose? Almost feels like something that flashes in your head 4 years later with such a different game.
It's definitely really cool to see the meta, you know, swirling around and always cycling, and having Ornn come back and being a massive decider and just game changer overall in this series. And you know that other teams are going to be watching this one and taking notes and really thinking about it. So like the return of this champion.
And you also have to kind of put on your thinking pants and think about, wait, it's 2-item Ezreal, but it's Triforce against Crypt build Lucian, and what that means when the teams start hitting each other, because these are big shifts in what the recent meta has been in terms of these two champions that have been played so many times.
And the knockup comes in into the taunt. Yeah. There's no way you're going to be able to use your abilities even. So KingZone once again, the Hunters in this game patch another member.
But this is Chovy being in the wrong spot. We noticed before Griffin had defensive vision around that area, and there was KingZone vision topside. The Griffin vision was cleared out, and then Chovy was CC barred to death. He had no chance to self-ult. That means he loses out on the bot side as the objective happens. That's Griffin, like we talked about, being at an objective second when KingZone had done all the hard work around setup, and it didn't take an on-horn to take down Griffin in that particular scenario. Griffin have way more work to do around objectives. Tremorsense will spot them. The CC duration, once we get 5 points into the queue, on the binding will be insane. And it's just very standard dotting of I's, crossing of T's, and dead Chovies leading to free drinks.
Same thing there in the replay, just got him and nice, as you would expect. And, well, they're not going to be feeling too nice, though, about the double ocean that has come up onto the map, at least here, Papa.
I'm scared about kind of where you assumed LCK is at, because right now, Griffin are doing the simple things wrong. And the simple things were their bread and butter in the past. Griffin's making a lot of mistakes here, and they are auto-seeded into the final. Does this mean something, or is it a one-day thing? Griffin are already, as we know, guaranteed to be in that grand final, but a lot of the mistakes here are going to be extensive VOD reviews, and I'd hate to be around CVMax, who we know makes analogies to passing time bombs to people and Spartan warriors. It's going to be a fiery night in the Griffin house, whether they come back or not.
Yeah, I mean, KingZone's a good team, but, you know, Griffin not only losing to KingZone, but they go down to 10G and Afrika earlier on, so you wonder if the winds of change are slowly moving against Griffin once again.
That'd be that's a crazy sentence, right? The winds of change was our 2018 summer storyline, when rookie lineup Griffin, upstart, made it to the grand final. could it be that quick that the wheel turns again?
Be pretty exciting in terms of, you know, keeping things fresh, you know, but definitely does hold some interesting and perhaps sinister questions about, you know, the current state of teams here in the LCK. That binding not maxed, as it is still long, but not the 3 seconds just yet for the Morgana.
Give it time.
We'll get there. But not quite going to lock him down in time for TusiN to make his way up there and try to make a play.
So KingZone actually have a way bigger gold lead than you would say when it comes to the 5v5. Part of that, like we mentioned, is the Ornn Jace discrepancy. Part of that is the 2,000 gold of Ornn upgrades that Rascal has. It's also the fact that they already had a 2,000 gold lead and an Infernal Drake for extra efficiency on their purchases. So through a lot of indirect and direct factors, I actually think KingZone is very ahead at this point, and Griffin have been pretty poor at actually keeping vision down. They're going to need to be pretty honest around Baron, as KingZone will start to make visits to that. And while their Baron speed, as Papa Smithy always likes to talk about, it's not great, their Baron turn with the Ornn, just as a single champion, is pretty good. If Morgana gets the flash in, if Shen gets the taunt flash, their Baron turn is getting up there.
And, you know, everybody can just pile in with that composition and just the interesting item choice you were talking about before, the crit Lucian coming in for the, the Essence Reaver first means that if he has any room in these fights, he's just going to be chunking people, double-shotting people for double crits. It's going to get pretty intense in those fights if KingZone start the fight on their turn.
And the cost is the Black Cleaver won't be as fast stacked. You don't have 2 of them, right? However, may you inspect the inventory and see 0 armor being purchased by Griffin and no real incentive to rush armor in a normal game against Lucian. I think you would try to just go away with, let's say, Ninja Tabis and be fine. Ninja Tabi's all they've got, and that means that if Cuzz starts the stacking, which Rek'Sai does very quickly onto 1 member, crit items are going to equally DPS down almost every member of Griffin and just blow people. This the Might of the Ruined King is done. So not the Might of the Ruined King, the upgraded Black Cleaver, whose name I forget. Do you know it by any chance?
No.
I know Molten Edge. I know Might of the Ruined King, which is such an awesome name.
Yeah, that's a good one.
The Frozen Fist is done. Hooray for Frozen Fist actually being the correct caster name for the Iceborne Gauntlet. I don't know the upgraded captain name either.
That's
Abyssal
also the Abyssal.
Names are hard, Valdez.
Deft does a lot of crit damage too. Viper has to be really careful. And you can see that there's really no recourse when you have a Black Shield on him too. Black Shield wasn't up there as he used it before, but didn't really need it, as Lehends basically just died, had to flash away just to survive. We'll take another Ocean Drake here and make a 5th one spawn. Means their Elder is going to be really intense once we do get to that point of the game.
My question to you, though, Valdez, is at this point, 25 minutes in, where there's been no teleport ganks from Lissandra, the Ezreal Karma went for CSCS in the bot lane, and now Shen ultimates can be there to muddy the waters. Ornn's engage advantage can be there to muddy the waters. Can Griffin win this game without a Baron? It feels like they desperately need Baron to actually get value out of, say, Jace Ezreal, both in a let's group together and try to siege alone, and if we sidestep the Ornn, we can actually take down turrets, or just side lane push with Jace. Without the Baron buff, it feels like almost every other future possibility is pretty heavily for the advantage of KingZone. It's kind of the opposite of the expectation in game number 1. Now, game 1 went surprising places. If everyone is playing at their maximum level here, I need to be convinced that Griffin can find a way back into game number 2.
I mean, even if they do have the Baron, you still have a lot of options for KingZone to go for that, you know, I wouldn't even call it a desperation fight. I'd call it a stand at their turrets, even. If Griffin are pushing in, they still have to be careful with the comp that they have chosen. So it's going to make things pretty hard, I'd say, for Griffin. Now down so much real gold and just overall other bonuses that you were mentioning before. So, excited to see if they could pull it off, right? They've pulled off miracles before, but now down a game against KingZone and down a game 2. It's not looking too good.
And does throw the standings into a bit of disrepute as well. If KingZone win 2-0, it'll be 13-5 plus 15 game score. That means that FSKT lose, things get tricky as mid lane.
Okay, get the knock up here onto Viper, and you can see immediate cleanse and flash. That was real clean from Viper to survive the taunt that did come out from TusiN. So, had that QSS ready, he was able to press the right buttons to make sure he stays alive.
Flash now down on Viper, traded for TusiN's flash. So a pick onto TusiN when he goes to try to clear wards. It's a possibility here. Looking way more tricky in previous time. Sword side lane pushing. Not often you see a Jace comp that hasn't been able to take down bot lane outer at 27 minutes, but finally they find both top lane and bot lane outer turret down. Vision control-wise, KingZone is still in the lead. It's so tricky, it's so hard when you have Karma support. Cleanse or no, she's so squishy that she can't be a Braum. Put up the Unbreakable and put down Advanced Vision. Your vision is very shallow if you're Griffin, and changing that probably needs a pick.
This game has kind of slowed down. Finally, KingZone did go for one pick, and well, speaking of which, nice. Actually catch there by Chovy to make sure that Cuzz could not get in range or make anything happen. I see you pointing at some Lucian items. Those look pretty nice, Papa.
So Lucian has a traditional 3-item carry build, could basically be a Sivir in this spot. We already talked about how that's different from expectation. Remember that with no engage support, you know, it's Karma to poke around as Tarzan tries to contest vision, and we already mentioned that's tricky for Griffin. They need to take a lot of risks to do so. The only person to dive Lucian and stop a short-range AD carry from doing damage is a Morgana. Black Shield stopping Lissandra. There's no one else to go backline. That means Lucian should be free hitting. And speaking of free hitting, they're onto this Baron. It's at 7,000.
Already at half, and now Griffin know about it, but Tarzan is in range. He's going to be able to get in, but no! Spike to Ornn goes the way of KingZone. Now they're looking for the engage, and Viper goes down to the Ornn horn. See you later, he says, and in comes Cuzz. Gonna be able to assassinate Tarzan on the backside, and 3 kills and maybe even more are gonna go the way of KingZone after the Baron. The flash on in, and the double kill to Cuzz gives KingZone 4 kills and the Baron.
KingZone are styling and cementing themselves as the dark horse for the LCK Gauntlet, and thus LCK Spring 2019. They're styling on Griffin at this point. There's no way, really, for Griffin to stop this Baron push. We talked about Griffin with Baron against Baron. It's a whole nother conundrum.
This isn't solo queue where your entire team types /FF at the same exact time. Even Pawn's got the upgraded Zonias now, as all the stats are going their way. It's insane how ahead they are at this point in the game.
Have we all been caught napping? Me in game number 1, and now suddenly the LCK world at large as the rise of KingZoneDragonX. We looked at the teams they'd beaten. Looking down the list of Damwon, Jin-Air, Genji, KT, and Afrika, and you were struck by who wasn't there. But this was a smart play. It looks like it's close, but there's a huge level lead, 3 levels onto the top laner. They almost stopped Jarvan getting into the pit, but even when he gets there, there's 150 more smite damage, and they take it down. Suddenly, they're 8-1, and they have beaten Griffin along the way. That's a pretty big story for KingZone, and one that will give them many fans. Previously Deft fans, now probably KingZone fans. So much more confidence in the best of 5 phase.
Claps all around. And even double high fives to everybody. They got every combination going there. A sword nearly goes down on the backside. As Rascal just in the replay was saying, yeah, everybody's so good. You guys are great at this game. It's all fantastic feels, high morale on the side of KingZone. It's all high confidence. These guys are on a massive roll and should be able to take this one 2-0. Only team they lost to in round 2 was actually SKT. And I remember that was a bit of a stomp. So it makes things even more interesting for if KingZone does face off against SKT in a playoff. Could they make it past them and then maybe even get to Griffin? But we'll have to end this game first as the knockup goes down on a Tarzan. Both Deft and Pawn do some insane damage at this point. Stop blocks on the side of Rascal, but he's so tanky, he's not going to go down anyway.
KingZone continue to push. 5 Drakes, Baron, everything is on the side of KingZoneDragonX. They pull away, showing brief mercy, but only for half a second. KingZone have basically full control of the entire map, and you're just not used to Lucian critting people with his double shot passive, and critting minions and monsters for even more.
This guy does unbelievable damage as taking a look at some of the items now they've picked up. Finally, Twin Shadows for the side of the Morgana picks up her first Glacial Augment item after all of that, so their pick potential going to get even more intense.
Add 6,000 gold with 6,000, 1,000 gold donations from Orin. Add the Infernal Drake stats. The Baron has only now worn off. The lead is even bigger against the #1 team in Korea, who would be tripping up for the 3rd time in 5 series. Total damage dealt. You will see that Lissandra has done nothing this game, has never got the roam, has been kept in lane by Morgana.
You know, Lissandra, if they lose, is going to be 0-4 for the day. That's not really what you would expect from a Lissandra. She usually gets at least 1 win. His knockup goes on to Lehends, but take a look at Chovy on the backside. They are going to catch her going on in there. The knockup comes in and, oh, just barely is able to get that ultimate off. Isn't going to matter, though. So many stasis effects. Keep her alive, but the knockup there was perfect from Rascal, and now everybody's getting into the pit as Deft is full health, and it looks like this should be KingZone pushing on for their victory 2-0 against Griffin.
And Valdez, it's not about Griffin, it's all about KingZone. KingZone have just smashed Griffin, and it didn't matter who was on the enemy team with a performance like this. They're looking for the close here. With enough members, they should be able to do it.
They just want more kills. They don't care about the Nexus. They'll take it out eventually, but going in for the dive even here is Deft thinking about it, just dancing around, even a celebration towards the end. 2-0, and it was quite clean from the side of KingZone, who looked really fantastic going into playoffs.
Imagine explaining to someone 18 minutes into game #1 who just paused the stream and left there and plugged and played another one of those 2-0s to Griffin, what happened this series from the moment onwards where they made that big mistake around the Drake that led to a Baron for KingZone. KingZone were a tier above. Another level is the nickname for Griffin, the team that looked so strong at the start of the season and for the majority of LCK Spring 2019. But here we are, 2 days before the end of the season, and we look at KingZone and wonder, will this team be playing in the LCK Grand Final? With this victory, they have guaranteed themselves at least top 3. They are out of the wildcard match. That will be Sandbox versus Damwon. They now have plus 15 game score. So SKT, all they have to do to maintain second and skip a best of 5 is to not lose 2-0. If they lose 2-1, or if they win, SKT will finish above KingZone. But maybe KingZone just say, actually, we found our advantages from playing as a team and growing in front of everyone. Maybe they'll take one more best of 5 and just take it to the bank.
Playoffs are actually heating up in a big way. You know, Damwon and Sandbox, they do look the least like the favorites, but hey, you never know, especially once we do get into those best of 5s. But now another team has kind of entered the ring. Everybody's talking about Griffin versus SKT in the finals. That's not guaranteed anymore. I mean, KingZone show up against SKT in that second playoff round. You never really know which team is going to make it up to the top side, and they put even more doubts in our head after tonight's performance, which just makes things even cooler as we do hop into playoffs next week.
But just like the fiestas we saw yesterday, you look at this series and say, what does it mean? Because it could mean everything, Valdez. It could mean literally everything, because our favorites and our auto-seeded guaranteed top 2 Griffin were just handedly outplayed for great swaths of the best of 3. But there will also be the naysayers who come in and say, Griffin had nothing to play for in this series. But if you look at the series, if you watch it back, it didn't really feel like it was Griffin with their eyes off. It felt like Griffin was just outmatched. It felt more about how good KingZone looked rather than how poor Griffin looked on their side. And Griffin were also trying to play mid-game champions, early game champions. What did Griffin learn from this series? Let's assume they were outplayed 2v2 and were playing 100%. do they look at this series and say, oh, maybe early game's not for us, and try to outscale? Because that's not a great thing to be learning in our turret plate meta either. So I feel like whatever the light in which Griffin take away this loss, it's a scary one on both sides.
It definitely is. I saw CV Max behind the KingZone players as they were moving over to the Griffin side to shake hands and then eventually go over towards the top. He's got a smile on today, but I'm sure inside he's thinking a lot about, you know, what does this mean and how are we going to prepare now to get into the next matchup. Of course, they are going to have to play up against Jin, so we do get to see Griffin one more time before they do go off to that first matchup.
I imagine that
finals,
one
rather.
will feel a lot like a friendly match rather than a competitive match because
Yeah.
Jin and Griffin are
They're going to try
1
to
and
show
10.
as little as possible, for sure.
What did they show today and what did they try to show today is something we can't know. They looked very, very poor in this series. We have to say, they go down 2-0. KingZone get a huge scalp and a 2-0 victory. KingZone actually finished the season with only 12 game losses because they had so many clean 2-0s. They played, I believe, less games than anyone. Maybe even include, let's do the math here. So it's
Get in there, Pop.
35 games for Griffin, and it was 37. So because Griffin were right at the top, it was slightly less, but they're way less games than SKT and Sandbox that had a lot of 3-game series. So another clean 2-0. That means that in the second round robin, the 2-1 over FLICKR was their only 3-game series.
It's pretty insane once you consider it. I mean, they did also lose cleanly to SKT 0-2, but doesn't really fit into our narrative at the moment. But either way, Cuzz, this was the one head scratcher of the game where you're like, oh, you know, he thought he had Shen and he had Horn right nearby, but he just died too fast and kind of baited his team into this one. Good on Lehends also to eventually get there. Not sure if they needed him. It's a nice idea that didn't pan out.
You didn't see the return of the Urgot or the Scion for the team of Griffin, and especially in the team fighting game number 1, its absence was felt when the misplay over-engaging as the Jace came through. And that just means we know so little about what this game means for Griffin. If you take it at face value, it means that Griffin have got some pretty big problems they need to clean up for the LCK Grand Final in 2 weeks' time on Saturday, so 2 weeks' time tomorrow. In Jumshill, the indoor gymnasium will be that final. But for KingZone, it plays into the Deft-only team has become a team of 5 that's got some crazy ideas, that plays a lot of unique stuff. Rascal went on a 7-game streak of playing different top laners and looking pretty accomplished on them after a start of the season where he would lose routinely the reverse side of the same matchup. So a lot of growing up has happened, and the team best for the journey of LCK Spring, almost inarguably, now that they've played their 18th and final best of 3, is KingZoneDragonX.
I just can't wait for the playoffs to start and get to see some best of 5s between the best teams that we do have here in Korea. Should be exciting, and every matchup that we go into, it's hard to call a clear favorite, especially after today and KingZone's performance. Take a look at damage, and you mentioned it during the game, but Lissandra basically did nothing, and Chovy picked it twice, so it definitely does raise questions as to, you know, will we see Lissandra for Chovy in the future, in the finals, or, you know, are they going to have him practice it more and just get ready to have better performances on it? Because, again, he was part of the reason in game number 1 why they did go in too hard, kind of baited his team into throwing, so.
And in hindsight, you look at the draft and say, you took Lissandra first round, which means you couldn't pick Braum. Of course, it's going to be banned because Ornn as a champion really doesn't like the Ornn being interrupted by the Unbreakable. And then you still took the Karma last pick, which was very likely to just get pounded by the Call of the Forge God. So
yeah,
you have to feel like the draft, they lost focus at some point in this game 2 draft and ended up opting into some of the issues of the game 1 loss. So yeah, really muddied stuff for Team Griffin. Awesome stuff for KingZone. It does mean Chovy gets no further MVPs, but
yeah,
I wonder, I don't feel like Deft is going to be picking up an MVP here, and here's the confirmation. So Cuzz, his 7th, and a lot of these 7 have come in the second round robin.
it's very true. This guy has picked it up towards the end, and has really looked great. Win to the top, you remember, for the first blood. Sets up this play at the bottom side. Pick after pick on the Rex side. Remember, that was first pick for Cuzz. So they really wanted to get him onto that pick and make sure Griffin actually banned it out in game number 1, too. So there was that kind of strategy saying, Cuzz is really good on the Rex side. Both teams knew it. We saw it here in game 2.
Definitely vindicated its first pick status, and they just dumpstered them from there on. Nice little auto attack threading from Cuzz on the Rex side. Not something usually that's a big relevant point, but we're going to get a 2-man interview that doesn't include Deft or TusiN.
I know.
That is pretty insane.
Been a while. But yeah.
Deserved.
Juan and Cuzz coming at you soon in the interview here. Of course, that will be translated by GSun. Interested to hear how they feel. I'm sure Kim is going to ask them about their spring and all that good stuff. So let's hear from them right now.
킹존이 그리핀을 꺾고 정규 스플릿 13승으로 마무리했습니다. 정말 기분 좋은데요. 자, 폰 선수, 커즈 선수 함께 할게요. 안녕하세요.
With Pawn and Cuzz from KingZoneDragonX.
네, 와, 그리핀만큼은 반드시 잡고 싶었을 거라고 생각을 합니다. 오늘 승리 더욱 값질 텐데요. 어떠신가요?
How do you feel about today's win?
솔직히 저희가 2대0으로
To be
이렇게
honest,
이길 줄은
I didn't
몰랐는데
expect this to a victory.
2대1로 이기거나 2대1로 지거나
I
이렇게
thought
할
it would
줄
be
알았어요.
2-1 victory or loss, but I mean we were in a actually Griffin was in the lead in the early game, but I think we were concentrating better in the late games.
해도 이렇게 화려하고 아름다운 미래를 그리기 지금 힘든
And
상황들이
you guys
있었기
did have a bit of a
때문에
struggle in
웃음이
the
더
early
행복할
spring
것 같아요.
split.
또 그 가운데는 폰 선수의 경기력
you were
상승이 있다고
The
생각을
key
하는데요.
of
폰
KingZone
선수
being
요즘 3연승
becoming so much
MVP까지
involved in
받으시고
the later
경기력이
time of
올라간
the
이유가
split.
뭐라고
What
생각하시나요?
has changed the most?
아무래도 제가 작년에 좀 오래
So last year I
쉬어가지고
did have a long break.
연습 기간이 이제
So
많이 안 됐었거든요.
I wasn't
그래서
able to
스프링
practice
1라운드
a lot.
좀 많이 부재했는데
So
이제
especially I was
그리핀하고
underperforming
샘박한테
in the
지고
first round
나서
robin.
더 열심히 하자는
After
마인드로
losing up against
해가지고
Griffin and
이제
Sandbox,
제가
I
안 좋을 때
practiced
또
a
강팀을
lot.
만나서 좀 대진도 좀 따랐던 것 같고 그만큼 더 열심히 할 수
So
있어서
we also
이렇게
faced some stronger teams than there was
이라운드에는
on the performing
다
side. I
이겼던
can
것
say that was a little
네,
bit lucky,
킹존의 미래
and
정말 든든하게
by
받쳐주고
practicing really hard, we
계십니다.
were able
또
to
커즈
come
선수
back
이제 이
and become
자리에서
a better
뵙는 게
team.
너무너무 익숙해요. 오늘도 멋진 모습
Cuzz,
보여주셨습니다.
once
경기
again,
소감
you got the
어떠신가요?
MVP. How do you feel about today's series
오늘
overall?
경기 2대0으로 이겨서 되게 기분 좋고요.
I'm really happy that we
근데
got
좀
the
아쉬운
2-0
게
victory,
제가
but the sad thing is
개인적으로
that
많이
I
부족했던
personally
것 같아서
think that I was
긴장도 되게 많이
underperforming
했고
today. I was
해서
really
다음에
nervous
더
in game, so
열심히 하고 싶고
I just
또
want to
팀원한테
get rid of those
미안하고
mistakes, and I'm really
이제
sorry for my
오늘 또
teammates.
2라운드
Today was
끝인데
the last
저희 팀
game for the second
감독
round robin.
코치님이랑 매니저분들
So I just
그리고
want to
또
say thank you to
숙소에
all the
있는
head coaches
연습생
and
애들이랑
all the managers
팀원들
and
다
all the sub
고마운 것
players and all the
네,
teammates.
커즈
Thank you
선수의
very
아주
much.
감사한 소감 잘 들어봤습니다. 오늘 타잔 선수와 1대1 맞대결
So how was your
하셨어요.
jungle
뭐 요즘
competition up against Tarzan today?
타잔 선수 평가받고
Tarzan
있고,
is
커즈 선수
one of
정말
the
바짝 따라오고 있는데 실제
best
만나보니까
junglers in
어떠셨나요?
LCK, right?
확실히 타잔 선수님이
Obviously,
잘 하시는 것
Tarzan
같고요.
is a
저도
good
근데
player.
제가
I
좀
can say
많이
that.
했어서
And I was really
좀 많이 부족했던 것
nervous
같아서
and frustrated
다음에는
today.
오늘 이긴 느낌으로
So,
이제 긴장 안 하고
Based on today's victory,
제가
I
더
just
잘
want
할 수
to
있을
perform
것 같아요.
better
네, 또
without being so
플레이오프에서
nervous on
만날 수
stage.
있으니까요. 폰 선수의 더 멋진 활약 기대해 보겠습니다. 폰 선수의 활약,
판.
챔프 폭이 정말 엄청나요.
You
오늘
have such a
코르키
huge
모르가나
champion
추가로 총
pool.
19개 챔피언.
So you have played 19 champions so
이렇게
far, adding up
태평양 같은
Quirky and
챔프
Morgana
어디서
today.
오는 건가요?
How are you able to do that all the
저는 이제
time?
나이가 좀 97년생인데
Well, I am born in
옛날부터
1997.
해왔어가지고
I've been playing as a pro gamer for a long time now.
오래된 게이머인데 이제 그래서
I'm an
많은
old pro
챔피언을
gamer,
할수 있는
so
것
that's
같아요.
how
네,
I'm
이렇게
able to play a lot of
챔피언들
champions.
숙련도를 좀 빨리 배운다고 생각하시나요?
Do you get used to playing new champions
뭐든지
easily?
한몇 판만 하면은
several
이제
games.
옛날부터 있던 챔피언이니까
I
뭐
mean,
새로 나온
because
챔피언이
I mean,
아니라
I have been playing
그래서
a
몇
lot
판을
of
다시
different champions
익숙해져서 그것들은
for a
다
long
배울 수
time.
있는 것
So
같아요.
if I just play one or two games at a practice, I can like play it in competitive games easily.
코르키로 맞대응하는 장면들이 많이 나오고
So
있는데요.
we are seeing a lot of Lissandra versus Corky matchup in mid lane a lot. What are your thoughts about that?
이제 처음에 이제 푸시
Well,
조건이 있고 많이
Lissandra
돌아다니는
does have a
쪽으로
push priority,
돌려서 좀 탑
and she can
미드는
roam a
이제
lot.
괜찮은데 탑 바텀이 좀 고생을 좀
So
하거든요.
it's actually
그래서
easy for me, but top
그래서
and
이제 코르키로
bot laners
오는데
are
제가
actually
버티면서
suffering
탑
from the
바텀만
Lissandra's
당해주지
roam.
않으면은 캐리할 수 있어서 그런 쪽으로.
But if I play
네,
Kirky,
오늘 리산 상대로 코르키가
well, I
아주
can
좋은
actually
선택이었다고
like
생각을
outscale
합니다. 자,
only if
1세트
our bot
초반에
or top
약간
laners
쉽지 않은
got
장면들이
ganked by
있었는데
Lissandra.
이
They can
한타로
count me on that.
경기가 뒤집히게 됐습니다. 용화 플란타 기억나시나요?
Do you
커즈
remember
선수?
the
방향이 되게
we have this highlight here.
줄 알았는데
Well, I thought Rascal was going into this, so we could have lost that.
베이스
But we had a really nice W from
이긴 거.
Deft.
사실
we
이때
were able to
킹존이
really
아주
engage
유리한
well,
상황은
so
아니었음에도 불구하고 그냥
we were able
밀어붙이는
to turn the
모습이
game
있었어요.
around and win that
전투
team
이길
fight.
거라는 확신이
So
있으셨나요?
we're confident that you're going to win the team fight.
아무래도 저희가 용칭
Well,
이유도 저희가 싸움에
The reason we
더
tried
생각해서
Dragon because we wanted to open team fight,
네,
so we were
킹존의
quite
보이스 장면이
confident.
나오기도 했는데요. 정말 합이 잘 맞더라고요. 네, 정말 멋진 장면 만나봤습니다. 그리고 폰 선수 이
Moving on to
경기에는
Game 2.
모르가나 들고 나오셨는데
You
네.
played
빙결
Morgana.
네.
Pleasure
상대자를
augment.
선포에 가시더라고요.
아,
이유가
But the
네,
active
그
item was actually the third core. Why was that?
하는 그 이름을 다
Well,
까먹었는데
I forgot the name. Actually, we have to go. I have to go for the GLP item, you know.
하다 보니까
But
이제
I got used to like going some normal AD items,
하나
so
빠진 느낌이
I felt something was missing, and that was the active items.
뭔가 저는 룬이 없는 것 같은 느낌이
I
들어서
felt like,
핑퐁도 없고
am I
일본도
playing
없고
without runes?
뭐 아무것도 없더라고요.
But I realized that I was missing the core items, so that's why
한
I
번은 빈결과 한 번은
went
써봐야
for
되지
very
않을까
late
해서
item to activate the
늦게나마
rune.
그래도 발견해서 너무 다행이에요.
네.
네, 팀원들이 혹시 뭐
Did your
얘기는
teammates
있었나요? 팀원들이
tell you?
그것까지 몰랐나요?
팀원들도 언급이 없었게.
They didn't even mention
저도
about it.
모르고 있었는데
I wasn't aware of it either.
와,
제가 깨달아가지고.
But I realized in the very
자책하고
late
있었어요.
time of the game, so I was a bit sorry for my
기혈강을 써서 너무
teammates and told them.
다행이라고 생각을 합니다. 자, 그리고 커즈 선수는 역시
Cuzz
렉사이로 좋은 모습 보여주셨습니다.
once again
와,
performed so
마지막에는
well
뭐
on the
렉사이를
rec
당할
side.
자가 없는 것처럼 보였는데요.
No one could stop
역시
you.
렉사이 제일 선호하기는
Is that your
킹인가요?
favorite champion currently?
렉사이 제일 잘하는 것 같고 또
think-
많이 좋은 것
Yes,
같아서 되게
Rek'Sai
많이
is the
쓰고
best
있어요.
champion.
네, 오늘 또
And
리산드라
I'm good at it, so
제이스까지
that's why I'm
양쪽
just keep
날개를
using
확실하게
it.
꺾어줬다고 생각을 하는데요. 초반에 좀 실수가 있었는데도
Well, there were
불구하고 잘
Some mistakes in the
풀어나갔어요.
early
전략이
games,
어땠나요?
but you guys kind of rounded it out
Rek'Sai-
well and turned the game around.
렉사이가 되게 사이드 자르는 게 좋은 것 같아서
Rek'Sai is a really good champion to catch out some players in the side
나쁘지
lane.
않아서 많이 사이드를
He had
자르는 것
some
같아요.
teammates, so we were
네,
able to pull
오늘
that,
렉사이가
those
특히
kind of
2세트에서 아주
plays
좋은
very
모습
well.
보여줘서 킹존이 이렇게 2대 0으로 승리를 가져갔습니다. 와, 정규 스플릿이 드디어 정말
So, the
마무리가
regular
됐습니다.
split
킹존
is
선수들
done. It's all
입장에서는
wrapped up.
쭉 상승세만 탔기 때문에 이
You
마무리가
guys
더
were just keep
인상적일 것
rising
같아요.
and rising.
어떠신가요? 팬들에게 한 말씀
How was
부탁드릴게요.
your spring split and message for
저희가
your fans?
처음 모였을 때는
When we
많이
first
부진할
started
거라
as a team,
생각하셨던 분들이
a lot
많은데
of fans
이제
thought that
처음에
we would
지더라도
be
믿고
very
응원해주셔서 감사드리고
underperforming. I know
이
that, but
라운드
I'm really
이렇게
thankful for the
팬들이
fans who have been
응원해준
supporting
덕분에
us throughout the bad and the good.
8승 1패로 마무리
That's
지었던
how
것
we
같아요.
were able to
그리고 이제
finish second
응원해주셔서
round robin with such a great
플레이오프도
result.
잘
So we're
해보도록
just gonna
하겠습니다.
keep working
네,
hard
정말
to
기대하도록
show great
하겠습니다.
performance at playoff series.
커즈 선수 이제 자력은 아니지만
And Cuzz,
SKT가 아프리카에게 2대 0으로
depending on the
진다면
results of
2위로
the
올라설
SK
수
Telecom versus
있습니다.
Africa series,
아프리카
you
응원
guys
한번
can
해야
end
될 것
up the
같은데요.
spring split in the
어떠신가요?
second
어,
place. Any message for the
Africa
Africa players? Africa Freaks fighting.
야, 너무 귀여운 응원 해주셨고요. 폰 선수는 왠지 더 멋진
What
말을
about
해주실
you,
수도 있을
Pon?
것 같아요.
예, 아프리카
Africa.
네, 저희가 잡았지만
We did take
네,
you guys
이거는
down,
뭐 KT나 젠지도 잡았으니까
but we did take
너무
down.
슬퍼하지
We also did
마시고
take down KT and Genji,
Africa
so don't feel so sad
파이팅해서
about that.
유칼 선수랑 선수
Fighting Africa, especially my friends Yuko and Sun.
분들이니까
You guys
또
are
이길 수 있을
such
거예요.
a great
감사합니다.
players, you know.
파이팅, 파이팅 해주세요.
So I believe in you
유카엘
and
선수,
fighting
선 선수에
Africa.
갑자기 존대를 하시니까 약간 어색하긴 합니다. 자, 커즈 선수 이제 4위 온
Cuzz.
샌박 담원이 플레이오프에서 만나게 될
You
텐데
guys will be
어떤 팀
facing up
올라올 것
against
같으세요?
either Tamon or Sandbox.
저는 개인적으로 샌드박스가 올라올 것
I
같아요.
think
네,
샌드박스 will
알겠습니다.
make it.
샌드박스에 대해서
The
데뷔
upper
잘
stage.
하실 거죠?
we're gonna prepare.
아무래도 1라운드
For the sandbox
때는
series then,
저희가 지긴 했었는데
Well, we
2라운드
did lose
때는
up
되게
against them,
깔끔하게
but
이겼던 것 같고
we didn't have a clean victory in the second
별로
round
무섭지
robin,
않은
so
팀이기 때문에
we're not really worried
잘
about
준비해서
them.
이길 수 있을
So
것
we're gonna
같아요.
practice just as hard as
와,
we can.
기대해 보도록 하겠습니다. 정규승 플립 마지막 대회 이렇게 승리로 함께하게 돼서 너무너무
Congratulations
축하드리고요.
once again
인터뷰
for
끝내기가
picking up the
아쉬울
last
정도네요.
Victory
팬분들께
for the regular
안녕하면서
split.
저희
So
끝내도
let's
될까요?
wrap up this
네,
interview by saying
팬분들
goodbye to the fans.
감사합니다.
Thank you, fans.
안녕.
Bye.
플레이오프에서 만나요.
See you at playoff.
Thank you, TusiN, for that translation. Nice way to send off the KingZone guys. We are going to be seeing them in the playoffs, as they mentioned in the interview. Does come down to if SKT lose 0-2 to Afrika, then KingZone will secure second. So it really does depend on that match to see exactly when we will see KingZone next.
Isn't it insane, though, that KingZone have almost speedrun the second round robin? They played one 3-game series in the second round robin. They lost one series 0-2. They're 16-3 in games, and yet only now, when they bash it over your head by beating Griffin, do you go, wait, these guys are actually seem way better than I remembered, because they just kind of dismantled people 2-0, 2-0, 2-0, and I was sitting back and be like, who does this remind me of? Their predecessors, Longzhu Gaming.
Yeah.
Remember, this is the incredible Miracle Squad that became Longzhu, that became KingZone. It feels like we're back in 2017 summer, where Longzhu pulled off the fairy tale and were the champions over SKT. Suddenly, KingZone could be second overall in the regular season. Suddenly, this roster that, compared to other teams that tried to stack, we saw a bot lane and then 3 players who didn't seem like they would be even top 5 in their roles, and now, even that, you're sitting back and thinking, where are Rascal, Cuzz, and Pawn in the tier list? I would say higher than you might think, given that names like Smeb, Score, big names have meant so little in spring season here.
Yeah, new names up there now.
What did we learn, and what are our expectations? It feels like the ceiling for KingZone, if you had said 4th or 5th, that would have been kind of my cap for them preseason. Now, I'm like, well, they seem pretty competitive against everyone. Only SKT have taken themselves out cleanly, so KingZone, like we mentioned, will be a Afrika Fest. It's so funny that Pawn had to say nice things to Afrika, because previously said, I played with those 2 mid laners, I'm gonna crush them. Now he's like, they were my teammates, I love them actually.
I love you guys, you're so good.
Well, it's gonna be in the 88th game that he's gonna look for an 8 out of 8 performance from Afrika Freaks. They're gonna have to find something at 8 p.m. to take down SKT. Now, they are the org that famously has always had an organizational result against SKT that other teams couldn't match. A win here would also guarantee that they're not in relegations, but it's a tall task.
It's a tall task. Like I said before, SKT, the only team to take out KingZone in round number 2.
And that means something.
And it was a stomp as well. It was a super fast night for those guys when they casted. So it was
my
pretty
goodbye
insane.
here, Valdez. I'm done for the regular season. I'll see you guys in playoffs, but you'll be back tomorrow.
I'll be back here with LS tomorrow, bringing you that nice matchup. So we'll see you then, guys. Thanks once again for watching, and have a good night.
You take me higher when I feel low. Make my world brighter when I'm alone. I keep on rolling, all with your fuel. You're like my gasoline that makes my dream come true. 'Cause this is the beginning. Together we'll be winning. You're all I need. I'm feeling feather light.